So the competitive aspect is yes, Asia Pac is emerging as a large source of intelligent manufacturing, and in that, that's not just China. You've got Japan, you've got South Korea, you've got parts of the ASEAN region. They're all coming up to speed with all different specialities. I'll tell you this though, the U.S. is going to emerge as the microfactory center of the world. This is what I believe the USA is making their comeback on. The ability to run small batches, very, very focused on demand regionally, being able to be super agile in what they actually produce and how they produce it to quality. And they're applying the same technology that we provide, but towards this, not just intelligent factories, but microfactories. So I think you'll see a renaissance of manufacturing in the US, for example, on this basis, and people will start to look to the US for these production runs that are micro, if you like, that are all important because if you're dealing with, let's say, consumer packaged goods, and you're focused on, the top well-being products that are in vogue, that's constantly changing. The US can respond to that really quickly now, and we've seen that. So we're starting to see that. In parts of Europe, yes, there are regions that are falling behind. Germany, of course, the DACH region or the German region, they are now learning to not just be as flexible as, say, their counterparts in Asia Pac, but actually to partner with them. So you're seeing big partnerships forming between the automotive manufacturers of Germany and the automotive manufacturing of China. And we've seen these joint ventures now come together to actually then move forward. So, the globe is stabilizing. They're normalizing, I should say is the word. They're normalizing on this is the way production should run. They're recognizing the strengths in different regions. China is probably best at alternative supply chain sources, in that they've got access to a lot more. But like I said, there are specializations. Europe in general tends to focus more on very complex manufacturing. The US on micro factories. So that's what we're seeing across the globe. I don't know if that gives you a picture of what's happening.
I'm Nate Wheeler, host of Manufacturing Insiders. Thanks so much for joining us today. So excited to have you. We're going to share some really awesome insights from a manufacturing leader. We only get the best on Manufacturing Insiders, people that have solved real world challenges, and I want you to learn something from them today. We have so much collective experience here, not only from our guests, but also as a marketer. My main company, We Create, generates millions of dollars of revenue for manufacturers every day. And if you would like to talk to me directly about that, I'm happy to give you a free audit. Just reach out to me. But enjoy this episode. Please give us a like. Please give us a subscribe. All those likes, every single one of them helps us grow our channel and helps more manufacturing leaders learn from the information that we're sharing. Thanks so much.
And I want to dig a little bit deeper into the microfactory concept. So a lot of the manufacturers that I work with are, you'd call them job shops, contract manufacturers.
Yeah.
And from what I'm hearing from you, it sounds like we have an opportunity to turn them into these microfactories. They're already doing high mix manufacturing. I mean, they're already doing on, more or less on-demand manufacturing. What do they need to understand about technology? And a lot of these companies I work with, you mentioned ERP to them, and they're like, oh, what is that? Or, CRM. Well, no, I don't think we have a CRM. So I think we have quite a few steps to go. But I think it's really, really important, if this can help them become more efficient, become more profitable, do more work with less hands. I think it's really, really important to help them understand the steps that they need to take to get there.
So the first thing is they need to understand that, turning their operations into microfactories, they first need to understand that they need to be able to operate across different types of demand. Demand spikes in one market might not mean a demand spike in another. So to treat these demand spikes, to be able to manage this demand dynamically, is the first thing. I mean, they're probably using some kind of demand system right now to take in, jobs, and they need to have AI and data at the basis of that. And they don't need to be super technical about this. They just need to be able to use the kind of data products we would provide them. So here's a data product to make sure you're always compliant. So now you can operate across regions. You can accept demands from outside of the country, inside the country, wherever the demand's coming from. Because you've got this compliance framework, it'll make sure you stay legal and you stay right. So if you say that to one of these potential microfactories, that's a tick. That's to say, we don't need to worry about that now. This is great. We've got access to data from everywhere. We know when we're compliant. We know when we're meeting carbon footprint requirements, something that China wasn't great at, by the way. And we can stay compliant. That's number one. Number two, they've got automation at their hands on a micro basis thanks to agentic AI. But you can't use agentic AI without the right trusted data. You need to get trusted AI, you need trusted data. But once they embrace that, they can now suddenly say, we can respond to changes in demand, not just demand, but changes in demand. And changes could mean different product, different volumes, different runs at very short notice. And this distributed production without distributed intelligence just creates distributed problems. So they need to make sure that they have the intelligence in place. And the intelligence doesn't mean that they need to get super technical with IT and AI. They just need to understand that their whole operation now has to be transformed into one that's based on end-to-end operational elasticity, I call it. So they go from they can cope with a logistics disruption like that at a moment's notice. So one manufacturer reroutes production across 3 sites, rebalances labor, adjusts customer delivery promises in real time without shutting down any operation. Now, when you've got microfactories that can operate like this, they become the trusted providers. They become, we can rely on this network of microfactories to deliver what we need in real time to the right quality, to the right spec, in time, to the right cost factor. And so they don't need to be overly technical, but they need to understand that their operation has to not optimize, not try and sort of improve. Oh, we don't have CRM, so we must get ourselves a CRM. They need to get transformed. And transform says, I'll take care of your CRM requirements. I'll take care of your production requirements. If you have a system, we'll use it. If you don't have a system, we'll integrate into one automatically in the cloud if you need it. And we'll be able to direct your operations. You bring the skilled workforce. And that's the other half of this equation. So you've got agile data, you've got agile systems, but now you need agile people. And again, especially Middle America, they're starting to produce this capability right across the landscape. You've got what I call flexible agile workforces that are ready to come in and work on a production run and then achieve success and then go back to, what's the next job. That model is starting to take shape, mainly in the US.
Can you define the agile workforce a little bit better? So let's just say I run an injection molding operation and I've got, 5 machine operators. I've got, my, operations manager, I've got my office staff, maybe 20, 30 people total. What does it mean for them to be agile? Does that mean that they're cross-trained on different, machines? What exactly does that look like?
Okay, so an agile workforce is one that can be dynamically reallocated, reskilled, and deployed in real time as operational conditions change. Now, there's a whole education behind that going on. So an agile workforce would allow a manufacturer to move people quickly between lines, cells, or sites, depending on what the production model is. They can match skills to tasks dynamically. They can scale capacity up or down as demand changes. They can respond immediately to disruptions and support a high product mix, frequent changeovers. So it's a
Right.
workforce that adapts to operation instead of the operation being constrained by fixed staffing. So when you've got a workforce like that, yes, they need to be retrained. Yes, they need to be ready to work in a different model. But like I said, the U.S. is cracking this. They're not assuming stable demand. They're not assuming predictable schedules. They're not assuming long product life cycles or fixed roles. They're now dealing with volatile demand. They're dealing with frequent product changes. They understand what skills shortages are and are addressing it. And
Mm-hmm.
they're operating across multi-sites. So yes, that's the new workforce that's hitting. And if I were back in manufacturing days, I'd be looking to be trained in that manner to actually say I now fit into an agile workforce.
I
And
see.
there are some pretty good companies who are good at this in the US.